This is the Court Leader's Advantage, a podcast series for court professionals and by court professionals. Brought to you by thecourtleader.net and in cooperation with NACM, the National Association for Court Management. Career development is essential for both individual success and the long-term health of any organization. There are several obvious benefits to an organization having a solid career development program. When people keep learning, they get better at their jobs. They produce higher quality work. They're more efficient, and they're better problem solvers. Employees feel more valued when they can see a future for themselves. They're more likely to stay and give their best. Career development helps staff stay current with business trends, learn new tools, and adjust to new roles. Why then do so many organizations, including courts, struggle to implement effective career development programs? Career development often feels less urgent than meeting case processing targets, struggling with budget shortfalls, and dealing with unexpected events such as high-profile trials. Development gets postponed until things slow down, which they rarely do. Career development takes staff time, money, and structure. All are scarce resources. Training budgets are often the first to be cut in tight times. Supervisors often feel they can't spare employees for learning activities. Not all managers feel responsible to develop their employees. Some may focus on employees just doing their jobs or worry about losing strong employees to jobs elsewhere. Without management involvement, career development programs often wither. There are also perennial hurdles. In smaller organizations especially, there just aren't many rungs on the ladder to the executive level. I'm Pete Kiefer, and welcome to the Court Leader's Advantage podcast series. This month, we're talking about courts and career development programs. Katie Hemphill wrote a terrific article in the fall 2025 issue of the Court Manager. It explains why career development matters and how courts can build effective programs. So let's take a closer look at what career development can mean for our courts. Here to talk about this fascinating topic are Katie Hemphill, former federal court administrator and current consultant specializing in professional development; Aaron Burdick, professional development manager for the Illinois Supreme Court Judicial College; and Julie Edwards McDaniel, curriculum developer for the National Center for State Courts. Thank you all for joining today's podcast. Katie, your paper emphasizes that professional development is not a one-time event. It's a sustained culture of learning. Yet in many courts, training and career development funding are often the first to get cut during a financial crisis. What structural, cultural, or leadership changes are necessary for courts to treat professional development as a core priority and not a discretionary expense?
Thanks, Peter. I think that one of the most important shifts is to start viewing professional development as a risk management and performance strategy. Courts are operating in increasingly complex and evolving environments, and without continuous learning, staff and the system can't adapt effectively. So looking at it from a structural change, courts would benefit from embedding professional development into their strategic plans and operational metrics. When training is tied directly to your organizational goals, your workforce planning, and your succession strategies, it's much harder to view it as expendable during a financial strain. And then from a cultural standpoint, your court leaders are going to play a critical role in modeling a learning mindset. So when you have your judges, your administrators, and your senior staff actively engaging in their own professional development opportunities, it signals that learning is part of your professional responsibility rather than an extracurricular activity. So that helps to create environments where staff feel supported in developing new skills. And then finally, from a governance perspective, courts can strengthen sustainability by building partnerships, collaborating with other courts, and using data to demonstrate how professional development improves efficiency, reduces errors, and supports employee retention. So then when decision makers can see that return on investment, training is more likely to be protected even during budget challenges.
Career development in court administration has traditionally emphasized administrative pathways. Yet today, courts increasingly rely on roles that can lead to non-administrative professional growth, such as trauma-informed engagement can evolve into counseling careers. Non-attorney legal assistants can lead to careers as paralegals or even attorneys, and the emerging expertise in artificial intelligence. Should courts intentionally invest in developing employees for these broader career paths, even if doing so could lead them out of court administration or even out of the courts altogether? Aaron?
I think we should. And the reason why is if we invest in people and think that they're going to leave the profession, we're less likely to actually give them the correct education that they may need to excel in their role. When I think about the court system as a whole, the more that we involve people into training and education, the more fair and just court system we're going to create, which is going to improve everyone's involvement in the court system and make our lives a lot easier and get more people into this great profession that we have.
Julie?
Thanks, Peter. So for the National Center's Institute for Court Management courses, there are elements of all of our courses that can apply outside of the courts, including budget, workforce management, visioning and strategic planning, leadership, just to name a few. But the special thing about ICM courses is that they are created by the court community for the court community, and each topic is addressed through a court lens. And I do think that it is important to train people so that they are going to do their job well, even if that means they might leave the courts and do their job well elsewhere. Better to have them trained and doing it well and leave than not trained and working for your courts.
When career development is defined chiefly by what the court needs, do employees begin to feel managed rather than developed? And what does that do to trust, engagement, and the court's long-term effectiveness? Katie?
I think there's a real risk here, and it comes down to how the courts define the relationship between institutional needs and professional growth. Courts absolutely have operational responsibilities, and they have to ensure they're developing talent that supports their mission and vision. But when career development is framed too narrowly around just immediate organizational needs, it can signal to employees that they're valued primarily for their function rather than their potential. So over time, that perception can have consequences. Employees want to feel that the court's invested in their long-term growth, not just their current productivity. And when staff feel supported, they're generally more willing to take initiative, to share ideas, and to remain committed to the organization's goals. When that support feels limited or transactional, you're going to see more turnover, less innovation, and difficulty sustaining institutional knowledge. So I think that the most effective approach is balance. Courts can align professional development with their organizational priorities while still encouraging employees to pursue growth that reflects their individual strengths and aspirations. And when you take that broader, more human-centered approach, you tend to build stronger cultures, you have more resilient workforces, and you have more effective institutions.
Julie?
Certainly, all of us bring our whole selves to the workplace, and we have all kinds of needs to be met. Again, our educational development course, we talk about employer wants versus employee needs. You know, the employers want to get tasks done quickly and efficiently, and employees want to do a good job, but also want to be a part of feeling involved and connected with the organization's mission of their coworkers and feeling supported by management.
Panelists on earlier episodes have repeatedly suggested that we rarely confront the issue of difficult conversations. Is this a foundational skill that deserves focused attention? Are we too quick to assume that employees just absorb this skill through other professional trainings? Aaron?
I do think it's a foundational skill set that needs to be targeted directly in your continuing education programs. Here at the Illinois Judicial College, we offered a class to our circuit clerks, and we're looking to expand on that curriculum offering directly on crucial conversations. There is a national curriculum out there currently. It's called Critical Conversations for Mastering Dialogue. I'll provide that link so the listeners today can also look at it. But it's been utilized by a lot of the Fortune 500 companies out there. It's been utilized, of course, with us here at the Illinois Judicial College. And I feel like it's such an important conversation that we need to have targeted curriculum for our court leaders on it.
Another sensitive area is the line between providing legal information and giving legal advice. Now, admittedly, numerous articles and webinars already exist on this topic, but should courts establish a formal certification program to clarify and professionalize this area? Do courts face a risk if legal information training is treated lightly? Katie?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's important to remember that court staff, in particular, like in our clerk's offices, are often that first point of contact for court users, many of whom are self-representing. They're navigating the legal system in a stressful situation, probably for the first time. And I think our staff really need formal training in this because they can find themselves in difficult positions where the boundaries are not always obvious in practice for what they can and can't say. A formal certification program could be a really valuable tool. It could help to standardize your expectations and give your staff a very practical scenario-based training for these situations. It also would signal that this is a professional competency rather than just part of customer service. When employees feel that the confidence in understanding those boundaries, they're going to be better equipped to provide meaningful assistance to our court users while also protecting the integrity of the courts. And there's definitely risks to not providing the training. You have obvious legal and ethical risks if staff unintentionally cross those lines. You also have a reputational risk that if information is not given correctly, or if different staff members are offering different levels of assistance or information, it can harm public trust in our institutions. So I think that providing a really structured training or formal certification would really help courts to reinforce public trust, and support your employee confidence, and promote more consistent and equal service delivery.
Julie?
As Katie mentioned, I think it is important that the individual courts and/or states can develop some training around this. It's hard with all the various nuances between each court and state to do something more, national. But we do have at ICM, the public relations course actually addresses this and talks about some helpful tips. But ultimately, the courts do want to develop something that educates their staff specifically to be within the scope of their policies and their answers.
No.
But it comes back to as well, Peter, with your career development, making sure that whenever you look at providing courses like this, that you make it as real as possible. So when we look at it from a engagement standpoint, role playing is a great tool that you could use to put your employee into that position and see
Yeah.
how they may interact with that. When I was very early on in my career, I started off as a probation officer before I became a director of court services here in Illinois. And during my foundational education, we brought in our local college to do a role play exercise where they played a justice involved individual, and I had to go through and work with them on their case management. And that experience really taught me a lot of skills. And when I look at developing curriculum, I try to implement those role play activities as much as I can, because as someone who was once new in the position, it's good to get that hands-on experience. And specifically here in Illinois, we have a safe harbor policy that kind of outlines some of those tools, that what we can and can't do and what that threshold and that line is to giving legal advice. And we've provide that course not only to our elected circuit clerks, but our deputy clerks and a lot of other court management staff here in Illinois. And we've made that course accessible on demand, as well as, offering follow-up courses on that content as well. So I think it's such a crucial conversation to have across our country. And I think it's good to share different resources and ideas of how we're implementing those.
How could a small or mid-sized court with limited financial resources design and implement a more sophisticated career development program? Aaron?
I think it's just being intentional and mindful of starting. Sometimes it's always easy to refer back that we have a small budget or that we're struggling to come up with money to provide content, but there are a ton of free resources that are available. If you're looking at trying to do something with different jurisdictions, Zoom offers free platforms as well. There is a limited amount of time that you can host for your meetings, but it's important to still offer that as an opportunity. Getting together with colleagues and just having these conversations is so important to have, and it's important to just continue to be mindful in offering those curriculum into the future. Budgets are always a consideration that we're always mindful of, but just trying to get the platform started, that could be through different mentorship programs. If you can't provide, conference space, but I think there's ways that we can continue to grow and evolve.
Julie?
I think that there's a lot of resources, both local, state, and national. A lot of these are discussed in ICM's educational development course. And there are obviously the professional organizations out there as well as a great support from NACM to NASJA, and even at NCSC. We have a lot of educational programs to offer folks as some of the resources available to all of the courts across the country.
In what ways should career development programs go beyond formal training sessions? What about mentoring, coaching, stretch assignments, or real world applications? Can these be built into a formal career development program? Aaron?
Yeah, I think it's such a key involvement to include mentorship. Julie had mentioned NASJA, the National Association of State Judicial Educators. They have a mentor and mentorship committee. I'm actually a part of that committee, and it's really important to have those mentorship capabilities and bringing experienced professionals in with our newer staff to just give them an opportunity to brainstorm and throw things at the table to see what sticks and what questions they may have. I do know here in Illinois, with our Illinois Judicial College, we offer a mentorship program for our judges as well. And we're looking to expand that mentorship program to other target audiences. It's so important to get these professionals together.
Julie?
I was just going to add in here, I was really grateful that Erin mentioned the NASJA mentorship program and just mentioned how that worked for me as a new employee at the National Center and joining NASJA originally back in 2018. And I got my mentor was the director of education here in Virginia at the AOC of the Supreme Court here in Virginia. And she really helped me to get more knowledgeable with the courts. I came from a child welfare background, so I had some court knowledge, but I think a lot of people in the courts don't always go into the courts knowing that that was their plan originally, maybe lawyers and judges, but a lot of other people, court managers, court executives, that might not have been their original path, and they end up there and need that opportunity to learn more about the court system and education in the courts, and that mentorship program can really help to develop those skills and knowledge.
Katie?
Just kind of add on what has already been said about mentorship. I think you have an opportunity for internal mentorship within your court between leaders and, maybe aspiring leaders. And that can really help your employees gaining institutional knowledge and professional perspective, but also external mentorship, which is something I've had in my career through a mentoring program through NACM, which is great because it's someone who is a little bit more objective. They're not as focused on your court's needs. They're looking more at your career needs and what you can do as an individual. So I think that's a really great program to have. You also mentioned in the question about coaching, and I think coaching is a really great tool. Again, it can be internal, it can be external. You can hire a facilitator for that, but coaching can really help to provide more individualized support, helping people to strengthen specific skills or prepare for new responsibilities. And then the stretch assignments and the cross-functional projects, that can allow our employees to take what they've learned in these formal settings or through their mentorship and coaching and apply them to the real world scenarios. And that's often where your most meaningful development occurs, where you take what you've learned and actually apply it. So I think that having this informal training is actually a very good sign of a strong professional development program when you're tying that in with all of the formal education that you're providing as well.
That's an important aspect to add is that the mentorship and coaching shouldn't be the only thing, right? We have to build your foundational knowledge, those core competencies that you need to excel in your role, and building off of that with your mentorship and coaching programs. I do know that the National Center for State Courts also has some coaching services. Julie, I don't know if you want to add any on that.
We do have a lot of coaching services available through our court consulting services here at the National Center.
Should we establish formal mentorship training?
I will
I
just say I think that's an excellent idea, Peter. And I've heard people talk about doing such trainings before, and it's definitely think that it can be helpful to make sure that folks who are serving in those roles know what it is that their goals are to work with their mentees.
Court where I previously worked, we had a consultant that worked with our leadership and worked on a lot of coaching skills and some of the things like Erin was talking about with the crucial conversations and those sort of things from a leadership perspective, but also talking about how to help your subordinates get ready to be leaders, which is really important for your succession planning. So yeah, definitely those services do exist. Being court specific, I can't speak to the consultant that we worked with works with a lot of government agencies, but it's definitely out there. And I think it's a really important thing to do is to, before you have someone step into that mentorship role or that coaching role, help them get prepared for that.
Organizational needs within a court can change over time, as can employee development needs. Sometimes these needs cannot even be fully articulated. For example, new roles involving artificial intelligence. How can a career development program remain fresh and adapt to changing workforce roles? Julie?
So here at the National Center, we are working to stay on top of AI, and we are providing support, especially to small courts, to help them be able to learn more about what AI can do for them and to use it in a responsible and acceptable way. There's lots of opportunities. I will actually share a link as well that you can share with the listeners for the AI information that they can get from the National Center. We're doing webinars all the time and projects. And for our education system, we're working with those experts here at the National Center to ensure that our course materials are kept up to date with the latest information regarding AI in the courts.
Aaron?
Yeah, I think it's important to review your curriculum offerings consistently. One thing that is always changing is our court system, whether that's new laws or new best practices that come out in the field. AI is, of course, a growing field that more and more people are getting interested in. And I think that from a foundational standpoint, I think as long as you're reviewing your curriculum yearly, I think that that's a really good foundational starting point. Depends on how evolving your court system is. You may want to increase that. But I think from a foundational standpoint, every year it's important to reestablish that, whether there were new laws that came into effect or new research articles that you need to include within your curriculum offering. I think it's important to constantly review that, especially for your foundational employees.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to courts that are looking to start a career development program? And one piece of advice to courts that are looking to improve their existing program? Katie?
Think that for courts who are looking to start a career development program, my biggest piece of advice would be to start by listening. So before you start building courses or your development framework, it's important that you understand the needs of your workforce, what skills your court's going to need in the future, and what barriers your employees might face in accessing development opportunities. I think you're going to be more successful if you're building your program around your workforce data and your employee input rather than making assumptions about what your staff need. And then for courts that already have a career development program and want to improve it, I would encourage them to shift their focus to impact over participation. It's really easy to look at how many people are attending a training session, but it's more meaningful to evaluate whether these opportunities are improving their performance. Are they strengthening your leadership pipelines and your succession planning? Are you increasing your engagement? Are you supporting your retention? So this is probably going to require building a feedback loop, tracking your outcomes. You need to have data to start with, and just being willing to adapt your programs over time as those organizational needs evolve.
Aaron?
For those that are looking to start, my biggest piece of advice is know that you're not alone. There is a whole court system out there that is willing to help you be successful in creating your programs. So feel free to use your connections, use your resources. I know anyone on this call would probably be more than happy to assist or answer questions. I know I would be. So know that you're not alone. And then on that topic, once you decide to get started, to what Katie said, do a needs assessment. Ask your employees, what are the biggest things that are your pain points, or what could we help you be successful if you were a new employee today? Utilize, again, there's research out there in different assessments. Other places may be doing this already. So just getting together with your colleagues. For those that are experienced, I would look at it from, do you have your foundational curriculum set? Do you have everything that your new employees would need? If you don't, I would try to envision and getting them that foundation completed. But for your experienced staff, it's just continuing and maybe looking at a mentorship program, Katie had mentioned about the next line of leaders. What is your succession plan? Getting something like that created could be a really good program as well.
Julie?
My number one piece of advice is to be a lifelong learner. The best thing I can say is to just be open to learning every day, take advantage of the opportunities to be a new learner from current programs to new programs. The idea of arriving at a finish line is really a myth, and to really take advantage of what's out there with organizations like NACM and NASHA, as well as other local agencies in your area.
I want to sincerely thank Katie, Julie, and Aaron for openly sharing their perspectives on career development in the courts. This important conversation reminds us that the future of our court system rests on the dedication and professionalism of those who serve within it. And to you dedicated court professionals joining us today, your daily commitment to fairness, service, and excellence is the quiet strength that upholds public trust in our courts and builds stronger communities. Thank you for your dedication to the work you do every day. Join us again on Tuesday, April 21st, for another episode in the Court Leaders Advantage podcast series, as we take on the issues shaping our courts. I'm Pete Kiefer, and thanks for joining us today. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. The Court Leaders Advantage is a regular podcast series on courts and court administration. Today's episode will be available on our website, on the Court Leader website, on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, LinkedIn, and on Instagram. Did you enjoy this episode? Please share the podcast link on your social media pages. Every share helps spread the word about the vital work court administrators do to strengthen justice in our communities. Become part of the conversation. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, email us. Our address is CLApodcast, that's all one word, at nacmnet.org. Did you hear an interesting comment by one of the panelists that you would like to review, but you don't want to search the entire episode to find it? The additional resources section of the webpage has a complete transcript of today's episode with the time markers for when each question was asked. Find the discussion question on the transcript, and next to it is the time that question was asked. You can either review the comments on the transcript or listen to the panelist's comment on the audio or video recordings. Remember, if you don't have time to watch an episode, you can always listen to the audio version. Listen in your car or on the bus on your way to or from work. You never have to miss an episode. I'm Pete Kiefer, and on behalf of our guests, the Court Leaders website, and the National Association for Court Management, thank you, and have a great day. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this episode are solely those of the host and the individual presenters. They do not necessarily represent the position of the National Association for Court Management.